Well, you know what? I want to start on time because we have a lot on our plate tonight. So it's great to see you all. Welcome to everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces as well. That is so great. And we're going coast to coast. We've got the whole country on board tonight. And I'm really glad that the storm hasn't come through yet. I looked at Windy. That's a very great weather predictor. And there's a big red thing off of the coast of California that's headed our way. So it's going to just start sweeping across the country. So I'm Rabbi Devorah Lynn, and I am co-chair with Mirala Goldsmith of the Jewish Earth Alliance. And it's so great to see you all. This is our monthly Jewish Earth Alliance network meeting. And I'm wondering, are there any people here who this is your first time to our meeting? Raise your hand. Oh, great. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to you all. That's terrific. Anybody from Alaska or Hawaii? Mirala, we got to work on that. All right. So we have every other time zone tonight. So our agenda tonight is to follow up on our fabulous February. So we should give ourselves all a mazel tov. Why don't you all unmute? We had a fabulous February of lobbying on Tu Bishvat. Everybody unmute and say mazel. Turn to one of the screens
Mazel
next to you.
tov.
Say mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
We had almost we had 100 and some people. Well, we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about it a little in a few minutes. Our agenda tonight is to follow up on that. We celebrated Tu Bishvat, the New Year's of the Trees, lobbying our senators on our important agenda for the new Congress. And we've invited 3 speakers tonight to reflect and follow up on our successful lobby day, and we will also have an additional action tonight to follow up further on environmental justice and climate legislation. So before we dive in, we always bless our meeting with a few words of Torah from an invited guest. And tonight it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, teacher, and friend, Rabbi Dan Alexander, who is a lifelong lover of the outdoors and an avid woodland hiker. Rabbi Alexander is the Emeritus Rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel in Charlottesville, Virginia, and a former director of Hillel at University of Virginia. He was ordained at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in 1979 and received a Doctor of Ministry from Wesley Theological Seminary in 2002. Currently, Rabbi Alexander serves on the Care for Creation Strategy and Research teams of a local interfaith social justice organization called IMPACT, I-M-P-A-C-T, and represents that organization on the National Care for Creation Sponsoring Committee. He was recently elected to serve on the board of the Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. So as they say in the Broadway show Hamilton, drop us some knowledge, Rabbi Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can.
Thank you, Rabbi
Perhaps
Devorah.
speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'll try. Is that better?
Oh, actually, my volume was down pretty low, so you're good.
Okay. So stop me if you need me to make a change. So I'm gonna dive right into this. But thank you for the honor of offering some words of Torah in this setting. If you are like me, you sometimes find yourself feeling overwhelmed by the immensity of the problems associated with what we refer to as the climate crisis, and even impotent to achieve any meaningful progress. So my remarks of Torah seek to address these kinds of feelings. As you may well know, we Jews have been reading from the book of Exodus these days, and in 3 Shabbatot, we will arrive at Parshat Ki Tisa and the story of the golden calf. Not exactly the finest moment for our Israelite ancestors, but an aspect of which I would highlight for the purpose of these words tonight and a teaching that can come from them, from the Parsha. Afterwards, I'm going to refer also to one line in the story of Esther, which we Jews will hear during the upcoming Purim holiday. So back to Exodus, though, the scene is Mount Sinai. Having grown impatient with their leader Moses, who has yet to appear after trekking up the mountain some 40 days earlier, the children of Israel commit a grave sin by fashioning a calf out of molten gold, and they begin to worship the calf. This is a huge no-no. As he descends Sinai upon seeing what is taking place, Moses is appalled. God, however, becomes apoplectic, furious beyond any fury known to humans. And in that fury, God declares the awful intention, declaring to Moses, now, I'm quoting here from one English translation, now let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them, that I may destroy them, referring to the children of Israel. To which Moses responds in the very next verse, let not your anger, O Lord, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand. Now, between those two verses, which are back to back in Torah, the rabbis go beyond and beneath the words of scripture and imagine, by vehicle of midrash, a vivid psychodrama taking place in the mind of Moses, and therein a lesson. These rabbis of old boldly, and you could say hyper literally, imagine Moses as he hears God declare the intention to obliterate the people as if standing adjacent to an embodied divinity, as he, Moses, as if he were holding on to the divine lapels, as it were, thus attempting to restrain God from lashing out. Furthermore, the rabbis then draw an analogy to this from this scene to get a handle on the psychology of Moses. It may be likened, they say, to a king who has become angry at his son and has brought him into a chamber for punishment. There, as he begins preparing to beat him, the son, he repeatedly shouts loudly, let me be, that I may beat him, so loudly that he can be heard outside the chamber. And he is heard outside the chamber. In a nearby room, the son's tutor hears the commotion and says to himself, I wonder why the king keeps shouting, let me be, unless he wants me to come in and plead on behalf of his son. That must be why he keeps shouting, let me be. Likewise, say the rabbis, when the Holy One said to Moses, now let me be, Moses reasoned similarly, because the Holy One wishes me to plead on Israel's behalf. That is why God says, now let me be. And at once he, Moses, begins to plead for their mercy, saying, as we read earlier in that verse, let your anger, O Lord, not blaze forth against your people. So this is the takeaway, the takeaway I'd like to take away. It's a dire situation of human making arising at the foot of Mount Sinai. The looming danger for human existence, at least for the Israelites, is quite real. In the face of an overwhelming force, then, Moses could well say, what can I, a single human and a mere mortal at that, what can I do in the face of overwhelming power? The game is over. Instead, Moses, like the tutor, hearing the king preparing to beat his son, hears in the divine words of intention to annihilate, not an announcement of a fait accompli, a done deal, but rather an invitation, a call, one tailored for his ears and just for that moment. That is, Moses hears God's angry shouting as a call, we could say, to use this lingo, to flip the script. So turning for a moment then to the Jewish calendar, noting that the holiday of Purim is nearly upon us, as in that regard, I would have us recall the pivotal moment in that story when Esther, where a similar teaching emerges from one verse in the book of Esther. Specifically, when Esther expresses her initial resistance to her cousin or uncle Mordecai's urging that she plead with her husband, the king, for saving intercession on behalf of their people, Mordecai declares as follows: "Who knows, but perhaps you have attained your royal position for just such a crisis." That is, here too, as with Moses at the golden calf, Esther needs to hear the dire situation as an urgent call to flip the script, a call directed precisely at her to change the outcome. And so, bringing it to us, to myself, I try to say to myself, the dire and scary news about the climate change already upon us, including the melting glaciers, the rising seas, the proliferation of hurricanes and floods, the droughts and the fires, the extinction of more and more animal species, and on, these are not indications necessarily of the inevitable demise of life on Earth, but rather invitations directed precisely at us, at each of us, exactly now, invitations to harness our human wits and our enormous creativity and our capacity to act as individuals and in collaboration with others, in our private homes, in communities, on the level of states and nations, and in global partnerships, to overcome any tendency toward paralysis and to go forth to mitigate and then reverse the worsening effects of a warming global climate. In other words, the overwhelming bad news can be heard as an opportunity to flip the script. Moses did it at the golden calf. Esther did it in Shushan. Time will tell whether we humans can follow their examples by flipping the script on the warming of our planet. Thank you so much for inviting me to deliver words of Torah this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for offering those very moving words that really hit at the issue and hit our hearts. You know, I always say that we probably all get a calling all of our lives, but we don't pick up the phone. And for you all coming tonight, you've picked up the phone and working with us this February on lobbying. So thank you so much, Dan. It's great to talk to you and see you and see that fabulous library behind you. So thanks so much. I hope we'll see you again at our meetings. I now want to call on Mirla Goldsmith. She's got some beautiful slides. She wants to give us an update on Lobby Day and show us some wonderful slides. Or was I not supposed to reveal that? The big reveal here. Are you unmuted?
Yes, I just realized I
There
had
you
to unmute. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Devorah. Thank you, Rabbi Alexander. This is wonderful. And it's my privilege to say a big Yasher Koach to all of you.
Okay.
Yasher Koach means good job, and Koach means power. So I want to say thank you for showing your power to Congress for Tu Bishvat. You enabled us to raise a Jewish voice for ethical climate solutions. And we called on Congress for climate action in a really, really powerful way. We had 140 participants. And I want to say a special thank you to Judy Burlfine, who helped to organize our Climate on Congress webinar, which reached a lot of new people and helped us to recruit so many of you to participate in the Tu Bishvat Lobby Day. We held 21 meetings with Senate offices, and here we owe a big thank you to Rabbi Melanie Aaron, who worked with our intern, Emily McClung, who's with us today. Emily, are you here? You still here? Please wave.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Emily. We are so appreciative of everything you did. It was so well organized, and we really couldn't have done it without you to help us get those appointments and make sure that everyone knew where they had to go. It went off without a hitch. So we really thank you for that. These are pictures from the meetings, the virtual meetings that we had, and you can see people were really enjoying themselves. These are the members of Congress whose staffs we met with, and really a great list. Some more pictures, and we met with senators from 13 states, 20 Democrats, and 2 Republicans. And here are some responses to our asks. We had 6 offices tell us that their senators would co-sponsor the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. 4 said that they would co-sponsor the Agricultural Resilience Act, which I think is more co-sponsors than they had in the last session. So that's really good. And we also asked what the senators would be doing to oversee the implementation of environmental justice provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. And 9 told us that they're already active on this. Now, I told you that we met with 21 offices, so we don't have responses from most of the offices that we met with, which means that we still have a job to do. We have to keep going and continue to work with our members of Congress to move these bills and other climate solutions bills along. Some more beautiful faces. And I just want to say to all of you, Tizkula mitzvot. In Jewish tradition, when someone does an act of righteousness, an act of justice, an act of tzedakah, when asked, you're not supposed to say thank you, because they're not doing it for you. They're doing it because it's a mitzvah. And I want to say to you, Tizkula mitzvot, may you merit to take more steps like the one you did on our Tu Bishvat Lobby Day, and be blessed with the ability and the opportunity to do more mitzvot like we did together on Tu Bishvat. You're muted, Deborah.
I punched on it, but there we go. Unmute myself. Yep. Thank you so much, Mirala, for that briefing and those wonderful pictures. It's great to see everybody on board there. And yeah, we had a wonderful turnout for it. And I'm so glad that you thanked Melanie and Melanie Aaron, Rabbi Melanie Aaron, and Judy Burlfine from Encinitas, California. And they just worked brilliantly together and really got it going without, as you said, without a hitch. It was remarkably smooth. So thank you so much for reviewing that for us. Our network meetings gather our partners together from all across the country every single month to support you in this sacred work on global climate change, to build relationships with our members of Congress, with actions, not just once in a while, like going to demonstrations when they're called up, or sign-on letters and that kind of thing, but every month, in order to amplify our Jewish voice on our action alerts, to give Congress courage and to impact bold federal legislation and affect needed change in the face of our climate future. So tonight, in follow-up for the lobby day, we've invited Natalie Goldfein to reflect on her first experience speaking up to the offices of her members of Congress, Senators Duckworth and Durbin, the big Ds. In addition, Natalie volunteered to lead the Illinois delegation for Jewish Earth Alliance. So let me tell you a little bit about Natalie before she speaks. Natalie Goldfein works as a professional and life coach, a Jewish educator and consultant, a Qigong moving mindfulness instructor, and is driven by, in fact, Mirala is Qigong instructor, and is driven by wanting to leave this world in better shape than where it is today. She lives in Chicago and tonight joins us from her hometown in Minneapolis. And I'm very glad, Natalie, that the storm hasn't started in your neighborhood. So we're all set. Can you
Sure.
unmute?
I think
Okay.
I am unmuted. Can you
You
hear me?
are unmuted. Thank you. Yes.
Great.
So tell
Great,
us
great,
all
great.
about it.
Thank you, Devorlin. I appreciate it. It's lovely to be here tonight. And I just want to say weather-wise, it did blow like crazy last night. It was a little frightening. Today, there's lots of talk. It's Minnesota. That's all we do here is talk about the weather. And it's snowing. It is snowing, but we're supposed to have about 15 inches by Thursday night. So
Oh,
it's a little less than I thought, so I'm feeling good. All right. So Daniel, you spoke about the call and getting the call and do we pay attention to it? And I'll tell you that my call on this was from Mirala, and I answered it because I answer the calls from Mirala, and I was really honored to be asked to head up the lobbying effort for Tu Bishvat for Illinois. I've done a lot of postcard writing and organizing people to do postcards for various candidates, but I have not done direct lobbying work. And I was realizing that I hadn't done any work with the lobbying since I was working with youth at a synagogue in Chicago many, many years ago, where we brought them to DC to lobby their congresspeople. So this was a very lovely and wonderful experience to get a chance to do it as even more of an adult. How about that? All right. So I will tell you that I was nervous about it, but I agreed because you have to step up. And also because there was going to be, I said, will you train me? Yes, I'll get trained. And then what was really interesting was not knowing who the people were that were going to do it, because we didn't have a big group that had signed up in advance, which I'm sure many of you experienced. And then, so the response to me was, so you'll recruit some friends. So I recruited some friends, which was great. And then all of a sudden, some other folks started showing up, which was also great because they were really interesting and lovely human beings. And, you know, and I will just say this, almost every one of them from Chicago, not all of them, but almost every one, turned out that the main connecting factor was my brother-in-law, who's a fabulous handyman. And that's what he does in Chicago, and they all use him. It was hysterical. Anyway, it was a little bit like herding cats. I will say that to get everybody, it was pretty hard to get everybody to meet in advance. But they were such good folks that it was fine. And what I found was that I felt really great during it and afterwards. Like all that nervousness went away once we got going. The preparation was good. I went to the webinar and gleaned a lot of information, but the part for me that was the best was a script. We had a script, it was written, there were links, you could find out the information, and it made it very easy to do and to let people choose the parts that they wanted to do, or to, as I like to say, to voluntold them, as opposed to volunteering them, which is what I think you did to me, Mirla. And so that was all good. There were a couple of key messages that came through that I found very, very important and very powerful. One was that you don't have to be an expert in your role here doing this, and that you're a concerned citizen who's talking to the representatives. And to me, that was the key point. And I found that it made everything much more freeing. I'm really grateful to the fellow Illinois, mostly Chicagoans, who showed up, and I was very appreciative of Dick Durbin's staff member. And yes, the other part that was fun was realizing they're all 22, 23, 24, 25 years old, and they're wonderful young people who we love to work with. But when we asked this young man what he needed from us, his response was that they needed our engagement, that they wanted us to continue to let them know about things that mattered to us. And that was a very empowering thing for the entire group. And also the reminder that the professional lobbyists are on the Hill every single day, making lots and lots of money. And we need to counter them, and that's what we were doing that day. So just stepping up, doing it, it didn't take a ton of time or work. And Mirala, thank you for asking. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to be of service.
Terrific, absolutely terrific. Let's give her a hand, or shake your hands, dance a little bit. Thank you so much, Natalie. I know you have to get off right now, but thank you so much you hit all the high points. This is what has kept us going. What is this, our 4th year? And that our Congress people say to us, please keep in touch with us. We're sick of those professional lobbyists. We like to hear from the people, and we like to be reminded of what is important to them. They're always saying, thank you for flagging that they have so much on their plate. We need to give them the priorities that we have. And I think we succeed at that beautifully. So thank you, Natalie, and the voluntolding, definitely. Mirala is a professional at that. So thank you all so much. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Natalie, and I hope we'll see you again very soon. So now I would like to introduce our congressional speaker. Oliver Edelson currently serves as the senior legislative assistant for Congressman Mike Levin, who is California 49 district, where he advises the congressman on climate, energy, environment, agriculture, transportation, tribal, and homeland security policy. I think the first half is exactly what our agenda is about. He also manages Representative Levin's service on the House Natural Resources Committee, as well as his role as co-chair of Bipartisan Spent Nuclear Fuel Solutions Caucus. Before joining Representative Levin's office, he worked for Representative Chris Pappas of New Hampshire, where he advanced the congressman's priorities on expanding federal investment in energy storage technology. A native New Yorker, he is a 2018 graduate of Dartmouth College, where he majored in environmental studies with a focus on sustainable food systems. In his spare time, Oliver enjoys cooking, climbing, and cheering on his beloved New York Yankees. And he's now living in Washington, D.C., so he can serve on the Hill. So Oliver, please unmute yourself. There you go.
Great. Well, thank you, Rabbi Devora, and thanks to everyone else who's spoken. Natalie hit a few of the points that I was gonna make, but I think there's one point I will make is there's no harm in reiterating points.
That's right.
Especially when you're engaging with your members of Congress and with your senators, and when you are emphasizing your priorities. Before I dive into how to maintain an effective connection with the staff of your members of Congress and senators, I think it's important to take a step back, as Natalie did, and reflect on who staffers are and how offices are structured. I think that's a helpful concept to have, and I'm sure this might have been in training that you did. So again, I'll try to go through it relatively briefly. But I think most importantly, no matter the position of any staffer, we all enter public service because we care about public service. And I think it's an important thing to remember, just as you all come to these meetings because you all are focused on the issues that drive you. I think it's important that the person across the table to have that empathy, to know that the reason they're there as well is because they care, and that's what drives them, especially in meetings on energy and environmental and climate issues. A lot of the people that I know that I work with, at least in the House and in the Senate, studied these issues and have sort of answered the call to public service because of their focus on those issues in particular. But at the same time, as you all have mentioned, we're often very young. We're not subject matter experts. I don't have a PhD in climatology, but we are informed and we're able to do the research but at the end of the day, as Natalie was saying, we get so many meetings, we get so many people. There are over 10,000 bills introduced each Congress. And what my boss always says, and it holds not just for him, but for our staff as well, is that, you know, representative isn't just his job title, it's his job description. And we strive every day to be representative of our districts and those we represent. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say hello to Carol, who is a new CA 49 constituent, because we recently took in her city of Laguna Niguel into our district, and we're really happy to have her and to continue that engagement with her and with our local Jewish Earth Alliance folks. How are these offices structured too? When you're meeting with a legislative correspondent or a legislative assistant or a legislative director, who are they? What do they do in the office? There are sort of three different paths once you get below a chief of staff, who is the head of the office. There's the communications team, and there's an administrative team, and we're not going to talk about them today. They're wonderful colleagues of mine that I love very much. But then there's the legislative team, and there are legislative assistants and then legislative correspondents below. In Senate offices, there's often a legislative assistant and a legislative correspondent who covers the same issues. And you don't need to know the whole organizational chart, but I think it's important to know that these people are part of a larger effort. So sometimes if you're following up with folks and maybe they sounded really positive when you talk to them, but then a week later they get a response, you know, we're not all powerful. We're part of a whole operation. And so I think it's important to know that, and it's a good way to sort of continue that rapport with the staff, or even if they're not able to deliver the best news in the moment. So with that sort of context, here are some ways that I would encourage you all to develop a strong relationship and, you know, keep the concerns on the radar of these congressional staff. I was looking, and there were over 10,000 bills and resolutions introduced last session of Congress over the last 2 years. So they're just bills I don't come across. If no one brings it to my attention, I don't have all the time in the day to read every bill. So that's why what you all do is incredibly important, because I always joke that my job is kind of triage. It's just figuring out what I should be prioritizing. And so in terms of that, you all have done the incredibly important first step of putting, you know, the Recovering America's Wildlife Act and, you know, the Agricultural Resilience Act and environmental justice implementation onto the radar of these Senate offices. That is such an important first step. And it sounds like a lot of these offices have already responded in the affirmative on co-sponsoring or taking the desired action, which is great. But follow-up is so important. And the few things that I want to make sure you all take away is, whenever you follow up and whenever you build these relationships, be specific in your outreach and be action-oriented, right? I get, you know, if someone emails me or reached out to the office and says, you know, act on climate, that's great. That's good to know. But if they say co-sponsor the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, that is something that I can say, okay, you know, Carol reached out to me and she wants Congressman Levin to co-sponsor this. She's a value constituent. So now here's an action that we can take. And we have our marching orders. You don't give the office room for, make it as easy as possible. Make it as sort of sequential the process. And on that, be really timely in your outreach, right? Think of good hooks for your follow-up, especially if an office maybe hasn't followed up with you. You had the meeting and they said, oh, this sounds great. You know, I wasn't familiar with it because, you know, maybe the staffer wasn't familiar with it. You know, maybe it's going to be coming up and this will take a little bit of work on your end. Maybe it's coming up in a committee. Maybe they just hit 20 co-sponsors. Find your hook and say, you know, hey, Oliver, you know, hope you're doing well. Saw a great thing that your boss did. You know, we're really excited because we just hit 20 co-sponsors on the bill. You know, really appreciated talking to you. Still, this is something that's really important to us. And I think those are really good ways to just not come across as a genuine without being a pest. But at the same time, don't be afraid to follow up. I get so many emails a day that I appreciate when people follow up with me. In terms of coordinating a group, I think this is something that's important, and maybe not. This might be a personal opinion more than a best practice, but I think especially for an organization like the Jewish Earth Alliance, it's important to have one liaison between the group and the office in that follow-up. I think you CC the whole group or you copy them if you're having emails, but I always find that if I'm working with X group or Y group, maybe I have a follow-up question. And if every single member, on the 5 asks, I've gotten them from 5 different people, it can get a little confusing. But now I know, oh, Carol emailed me. I have Carol's email. I have this question. Let me shoot it back to her right now, or let me follow up with her right here. And, you want to be inclusive of all the other people and CC them. And if there is someone who's a subject matter expert that you want to loop in, go for it. But I think it's easy to know and have the liaison and have one specific person. And again, if it's a group, you can dictate based on congressional office. But I think that's a good best practice. And then the last thing that before we jump into questions is, I think it's important to be to think about different ways you can measure your success, right? There is obviously co-sponsoring a bill is great. If the office says, we'll co-sponsor it, and then they co-sponsor it. But it's also, it can be successful just for them to be aware. Maybe it's an office that might not be considering supporting the bill in the first place if it comes to a vote, but they know that their constituents are paying attention to it. So maybe when it comes up for a vote in committee, the senator or the member will support it. Or maybe they are already a co-sponsor when you come back for future lobby visits after this bill is reintroduced. And then the ask can be retailored and strengthened to say, we know that Senator XYZ serves on the committee of jurisdiction. Will they talk to the chairman about having a hearing on it? So I think just, it's easy to think about co-sponsoring as being the only sort of success metric. But I think you sort of want to adjust that. So if the office doesn't co-sponsor it, that's not a failure. That is, you are raising the awareness, because oftentimes these bills take multiple years, or they take different, there are bills that take a decade. We look at the Inflation Reduction Act, it's sort of, everyone thinks it sort of happened overnight, and one day Senator Manchin announced it. You look at the provisions of the bill, they come from these other smaller pieces of legislation that have been slowly working their way through, some for a few Congresses, some for decades. And it wasn't always, it was, those made progress because one Congress, they had 11 co-sponsors, and then it was 13, and then it had it's small things. So when you get one additional co-sponsor, or if you help secure a hearing for a bill, those are really, even if it doesn't become law at the end of this year. Yes, exactly. I think we're 50 years in on RAWA, as we call it. So those are just ways to measure, ways to look at success and measure success. But I think it's, those are sort of the top points. I'm sure you all have great questions, and I haven't looked in the chat yet, so I will leave it there, and then we can break into conversation.
Yes, great. We'll try to handle these questions. That was very concise, and a great affirmation of what we do. A lot of those things already, and I think it is what is moving this organization forward and giving people positive feedback on what they're doing. But some other great tips that what we need to do is be consistent with our follow-up, and having a liaison for each group is an important ideal. And yeah, we had the issue in Maryland, you know, like our steering committee is mostly in Maryland. And we had asked the senators to co-sponsor the RAWA, the wildlife bill, but they didn't want to because they were trying to balance the Republicans and Democrats who were co-sponsoring it. So there are sometimes these political reasons for not doing something, not co-sponsoring. But there are other other successes. So let's see what we have. Should we, Rachel Dreyfus says, should we be following up then to make sure if they said it's likely they'll sponsor that they did sponsor? And it seems to me the answer to that is yes.
Yes. So I would also say make sure as you follow up to do your research, right? Congress.gov is a great resource. And one very niche trick, if you hear that a bill gets I would wait until the bill is introduced. I don't know if I can never know what they're doing on the Senate side and in the senior chamber. I don't know if it's been reintroduced yet. I would probably wait until they reintroduce. And then one annoying part of Congress.gov, okay, great, is that it sometimes takes a while for the bill title to be uploaded. So you'll be searching for Recovering America's Wildlife Act. You won't see it up there. But if you search by the senator who's introducing it, it will have the long title, you know, a bill to blah, 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 and for other purposes. So I would do a little Google search of Recovering America's Wildlife Act 2023, check, and then cross-reference and say, okay, we met with Senator Padilla. He said he was going to co-sponsor it. Let me see if he's listed on the press release. Oh, he is. That's amazing. Then you do a follow-up to them, and maybe you have maybe coordinate with other asks. So you say, we're so happy he co-sponsored this. Gratitude is awesome. So don't forget to be grateful when good things happen, because it makes us as staffers to be like, oh, that's great. Like they're really happy about this, but there's one more thing we can do. That seems easy. Let's do that too. So you can either say, thank you so much, or, hey, and it's sort of that good intervention point that I talked about too, of that's a good hook, right? Hey, we saw that, the senator, we want to let you know that the Recovering America's Wildlife Act was recently reintroduced. Would love to have the senator support on it. Reattaching some resources, and please let us know if you have any questions. I think that's a great way to do follow-up if they maybe seemed positive but didn't commit to it. Always
good to give a compliment first.
Yeah, we're all human. I think one important thing is we're all humans, right? And sometimes the staffers might be really passionate about the bill, but it might be that someone above them says, you know what, there's this weird political thing, we're not going to. So you never know. And so, I think it's also just it's a good, way to live one's life, but it's always, coming from a place of empathy and positivity when you're, maybe they haven't, followed through on something.
Yeah, what was I going to ask? Sorry, I just lost it. But Mirla was asking, how you said don't be a pest, but Mirla was saying, how often do you think it is appropriate to follow up on the same bill?
I would say maybe if there's not imminent action, right? If it's the day before the Inflation Reduction Act, like go for it. Just send in the cavalry. At this point in the Congress, I would say maybe once a month. Things take a long time. There are times where I'll be running a bill to co-sponsor, and it will just get sort of slowed down in a process, and it'll take me a few weeks to even if it's like I'm sold from the minute and everyone else is. Sometimes things just take a while. So I would say probably once a month with the caveat that like you don't want to miss the opportunity. So if there is sort of if you think there's imminent action where the senator's support or the congressperson member's support is critical, then go for it. But if it's just sort of you're building that drumbeat of support, I think once a month is probably, an appropriate cadence.
Okay.
And I wouldn't take someone's unresponsiveness as a bad sign. I miss emails all the time, unfortunately. And so if an office doesn't respond to you, I wouldn't take that as they want to, cut you off. I wouldn't send 6 emails in a row and expect them to respond on the 7th time. But, if they don't respond twice, that's normal.
If the member's not on the committee that's appropriate, is it still appropriate to ask them to speak to the committee chair? Or is that doesn't
It
work?
depends on the context. It's easier if you're on the committee. And the Senate is a different beast than the House, just because we're so much larger that it is, and our committees are a lot larger, that I do think when you're asking members of the House to, if they're already a co-sponsor, to talk to a committee member or a committee chair or ranking member, it's probably smarter to try to go through a member who sits on that committee. In the Senate, my sense is that because there are, 100 of them, 51 who caucus with the Democrats, it's pretty small, that if you think that it would matter, then it's probably fine to have someone who doesn't sit on the, Senate Agriculture Committee reach out to Chairwoman Stabenow on that.
And then while we're on the topic of differences between the House and Senate, are there other things that you have heard or noticed or are aware of that are different besides what you just said about the size? And
we could be here for months. But no, we love our Senate.
Well, give us one or two.
But I think that I'll do a few things. First is in terms of staff. Senate staffs are a lot bigger. They have multiple people who can cover this, the same issue, which allows them to sometimes be able to dive deeper into specific subject matters. But at the same time, larger staffs means more process, which means that things could take longer. There's more steps, there's more rungs in the ladder. And so, what I was just saying, and things can sometimes take a while, that's for the House. In the Senate, it could take a long time. And senators have the longer not to get too much into things you all already know. But because senators have 6 years, they have a different way of looking at issues sometimes, because maybe they don't feel the urgency of having to accomplish something this Congress, and they can say, this isn't going to be our priority for this 2-year term, or these 2 years in our term. We're going to focus on these things, and we're going to come back to this if the composition of Congress looks different. And so sometimes they take this sort of more long-term institutional view, whereas the House is kind of always in the short term. Let's see what we can get done. Let's see what we can push. Let's see how we can move the needle or further a conversation. And so I think those are some of the differences. But
long-term versus short-term, larger population than smaller. More intimate. I got 2 more questions here. Let's see. I wanted to, petitions. What do you think of petitions? Should we send petitions, have our members all sign and send to reinforce how many voters care? Have our members, not your members. What do you think of petitions?
So I think that they are let me tell you how it works on our end when we get a series of petitions. We get a ton of messages a week through, in the right to your member. We have one member of our team here on the House side that manages this system, but all the messages go to the member. and all the staff gets notified of the top priorities in their issue areas, and then we work on the responses with our colleagues that then get approved by the congressman. In our case, each office might take things a little differently. So that is to say that there is visibility into what people are writing in and the petitions. I think the same best practices that I talked about in terms of your engagement with Congress is so important for petitions or any outreach. Is be specific. Please co-sponsor HR number the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. This bill would do this. Make it like impossible for someone not to understand what it is. I think that the meetings with legislative staff and the personal email follow-up is incredibly powerful. I would probably continue to place an emphasis on that over petitions. Not that I think doing both is a bad idea, but I think that there's a power in developing a personal relationship with the staff of those offices and the legislative staff in particular.
There's a petition's more anonymous. Or it doesn't target the staff.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way to put it. And if there's only the petition, if your only engagement with an office is through petitions and there's no personal face and story to the request or to the petition, then it becomes harder. I think that if you have a relationship with an office and then you call to your members who live in the state or the congressional district to do follow-up via petition, I think that's a useful way to do it. But just the scale of these petitions can sometimes be so large that I don't know how big you all are, but we can get a single petition that, if the Wildlife Society, I'm making up the NRDC, and we can get 1,400 messages on one topic, and so sometimes that can crowd it out. And even if they're 20 on one topic, it's sort of, we're just like overwhelmed with all of these with those messages. So I would continue to place an emphasis on the meetings, and personal email follow-up is how I'll put it. Although this is just speaking from me and my personal experience. Other offices might say, petitions are the way to go. I definitely do that. So I would continue to do both as your bandwidth allows.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you. We want to get on to our action tonight. I want to thank you, Oliver, for your insight on this. And I think this is going to be a focus for us this year. I think you just said our mission statement to develop relationships with our congressional members so that they will pay attention to us, as opposed to a more anonymous piece of paper with 1,000 signatures on it.
Yes.
So that's great. I think we're on the right track.
Yes, and I will throw in my email, and I know there's some questions we didn't get to.
Yeah, there are a few more questions.
I will throw in my contact information into the chat,
Right.
And even if you're not a constituent of California's beautiful 49th Congressional District, please treat me as a resource. So if you have any other further questions, let me know, and I'll try to get to some of these in the chat as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So yes, thank you for taking the time to inform us. And this is going to be a focus for us this year, is to follow up, so that we strengthen our advocacy in that way. All right. Well, now I'm going to turn it back over to Mirala, who is going to lead us in an action tonight to conclude our meeting. What's up, Mirala?
Well, this was the perfect intro for our action. On our lobby day, we Let's see if I can make this work. Okay, no, I'll try again. We talked with our Senate offices about the environmental justice provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. And tonight we're going to do some follow-up with that because we've been able to learn more and get more specific about what they can do. So, okay. So our action alert for this month is realize the promise. Make sure that those funds that are supposed to be directed to environmental justice are actually going to get there. Our allies in the environmental justice community say that very often when funding is supposed to go to disadvantaged communities, it never ends up there. And there are a lot of reasons for that. For example, small grassroots organizations that are working in these disadvantaged communities may not know how to apply for federal funds. Big organizations or companies can come in and they can they know how to apply and they know how to follow up and they have all the resources to make their applications competitive. So there are a lot of reasons why these funds don't always get to where they're supposed to go. Oh, another reason I was told is if funding goes to the states, sometimes the states just decide to do something else with the money instead of directing it where Congress wanted it to go. So the Inflation Reduction Act has funds in it for, these are just some of the things that are supposed to be helping communities that have suffered under the fossil fuel economy. These are the kind of things that are supposed to get down to the grassroots, to these disadvantaged communities. So what can members of Congress do? They already passed the law. Yay! Thank you, Oliver. Tell your boss. We really appreciate that the Inflation Reduction Act did pass and that it has this unprecedented amount of support for environmental justice communities. I just want to point out, why are we focusing on that? There are a lot of other things in the Inflation Reduction Act that we really care about in terms of, building out the grid, building out more renewable energy capacity. But as people of faith, we always have to be keeping in mind those who are suffering and those who have the least resources, and be speaking up as allies with those who are suffering from these inequities. So what can members of Congress do now that the bill has passed? So our allies in the environmental justice communities have suggested a few specific things. Oliver, I'm kind of interested in what you think of these asks. You can tell me afterwards if you want. So one is that members of Congress can direct their own district offices to support community groups that are seeking funds. We actually met with Senator Van Hollen's office, and he said the staff told us that he's already been directing his district offices to do that. They can push for requiring regional advisory councils that have environmental justice advocates on them to oversee the use of the funds at the state level. They can also push for meaningful community engagement, make sure that the EPA, the Department of Energy, the Department of Interior, the administration departments that are going to administer these programs have meaningful community engagement. And another one is that the IRA it's mostly tax incentives for a lot of these programs, and they're actually higher tax credits, more tax credits for companies that pay prevailing wages and provide apprenticeships. And people in the environmental justice community are worried that although this is in the IRA, it might not actually really get implemented on the ground. And this is important because this is going to provide green jobs for people. So these are things that members of Congress can do. Probably the simplest one is direct their own district offices to support community groups seeking funds. So everybody remember that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write to our senators and we'll remind them that we want them to use their powers of oversight to make sure that these funds for environmental justice in the IRA are being used the way they should be. Now, first, I'm giving you this link so you can find the website of your senator. I thought we'll focus on Senate tonight because that's who we lobbied on Tu Bishvat. So go to the website of one of your senators. If you don't know the website, you can find it at this link. I believe Amy's going to put this link in the chat. Did she do that? I can't see.
Yes, it's in the
Let's see.
chat.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so once you find the website, here is a message that you can send, okay? I realize now it's a little bit long. However, you can make it shorter if you want. We're going to thank our senator for passing the Inflation Reduction Act. And we're going to urge them to use their oversight powers to make sure that the money goes for environmental justice provisions goes to environmental justice communities. So we're going to put this message in the chat as well. I always like to put our faith perspective. As a Jew, I'm inspired by the leadership of Moses, as we heard tonight from Rabbi Alexander, who responded to the needs of his people with compassion and transparency. We're coming up on Parshat Pekudei, I believe it's ahead of us, right? And where Moses talks about what he did with all that money that he collected for the tabernacle. He reported every dollar, well, every shekel or something, every bit of gold and copper and brass and whatever he reported to the people, because he had to earn their trust with his transparency. So I like to put that in, but you can put in whatever you want about why you think this is important to you. Okay, so has let me go to let me see if I can see more of you. Wave if you found your senator's website. Okay. Anyone have any questions? Need help with finding that? And I think, Amy, you put the message in the chat, right?
I put in the message and the talking points.
Okay, fine. And if you want to add that specific ask, like we heard from Oliver, you can put in, please direct your district office to help communities access funds from the IRA or something to that effect. Is that a good ask, Oliver? Okay,
Yes.
good. Anyone have any questions? Why don't you put in the chat when you're done so we'll know when to move on.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
I'm totally new to this, totally new. I'm not really a political person, but this is a issue that I would get involved with. I'm in Washington State. But this little message, I need to be voluntold what to write.
You can write exactly what I wrote if you want.
No, I know, but I don't know how to copy this.
Oh.
in the chat.
Okay, go
So
to
I
the,
think I put a question, is there any way to email it or get it a different way?
yes, very good question. You can actually go to our website. Amy, can you put the link in the, for the action?
Yeah, I did. It's in the chat to everybody. If you
You
run
can
out of
put it
time.
again. You can put it in again. You can go to our website and find the action alert, which, by the way, has a lot more background information and explains all about this. And then you can take action at home. But if you want to do it now, you can go to the chat and you can copy what's in the chat. You don't know how to do that? We'll walk you through it. You stay on at the end, okay? And I will personally show you how to do it.
Oh, okay, I muted myself. So on your website, or do you also have the bills listed that you are lobbying for?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. There's a lot of information on our website, and you can also go to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about the bills from different briefings that we've had. All of our meetings are recorded there. Okay, someone tell me how you're doing. Let's see.
I was able to do it to both my senators, and it was a little different, a formula.
Great. That's great. Phyllis, how are you doing?
Still editing my first one. It was a little hard to get into their box,
Okay.
but I'll be doing the second one soon.
When he said he had thousands of emails, I thought I'll just copy and paste.
Oliver, what do you think about copying and pasting?
Yeah, I think that that's totally fine.
It's
Especially
fun.
in a message that no, but I think that has specifics here. I think it's that, you know, you don't need to let the perfect be the enemy of the good on this. And I think it's a strong message.
Thanks. Devorah, I'm thinking that maybe we
Yeah.
should finish out the meeting and everyone
Okay.
can finish their messages afterwards. But I really want to thank you all for taking action. We know that it's much easier to do it when we're together and we're doing it in the moment rather than putting it off or waiting till the newsletter comes or telling you to go to the website. So we really, really appreciate that you're taking action now, and we'll be helping you with more follow-ups, with tracking where the bills are at. Those two bills that we spoke about on Tu Bishvat actually have not been reintroduced yet. So I think what Oliver said is really important. When they are reintroduced, we will let you know so that you can follow up at that moment when it's really timely. So thank you, and let me turn it back over to Devorah.
Thank you. Yes. To those who are new to Jewish Earth Alliance, I just want you to know that on our website, we have our action alerts, both historically and the current one, and that they are so beautifully researched and have links all over. I have nothing to do with them, so I'm not patting myself on the back. There is a committee that I'm not even sure who it is, that researches these bills and the action alerts, and the links are so informative and just terrific. So I want to thank everybody for coming, thank our speakers, Dan and Oliver and Natalie, and thanks to Mirla for updating us on our Tu Bishvat action, and Melanie, Aaron and Judy Burlfine for all of their work on that, and Amy Dick for her wonderful work on the newsletter. Thank you so much. And the rest of our steering committee as well. So I just wanted to say blessings to you all on this sacred work that you have undertaken. Tzedek Tirdof. May you pursue justice. And as Rabbi Dan said, that famous quote from Purim, from Esther, that perhaps this is what you were born for at this time in our history. And I hope that you will be able to persevere and keep up the good works. So good to see everybody tonight. Have a wonderful evening, and keep up the good work. Keep the faith and keep up the good work.